So that brings us to present day, pretty much. And I was able to get all the wrestling figures that I needed, a lot of which were for customs. Because it was very important if I was going to continue MXW. If I was going to continue MXW, I had to continue the way I left it. And I had a lot of the, the stars that I had, a lot of the wrestlers I had were, it was kind of half and half. I had, real guys, which again, some of those were customs. And then I had my created guys. And it was really important to bring those created guys back to life, so to speak. I had to have Jason Troy and Jeff Corona and Bulletproof Matt Brown. Those guys. Those were really important, and those were guys that, are a lot easier back then because those guys were put together pretty much from, spare parts and stuff that I had. Those guys were put together with things I already had, and to try to, turn around, especially with Mattel, had just, still, with Mattel's run with the WWE license being still so young, there were, there's still, very few parts to work with, a majority of today's figures, and it's even worse with elites. There are a lot more basic parts to use versus elite. But even then, majority you have are, trunks and kick pads and stuff like that. I had a really hard time with Bulletproof Matt Brown because because his classic attire, his original attire was, camo, baggy camo pants, black boots, and then he had the gloved, kind of biker-esque, fingerless gloves, and some tattoos and stuff like that. So, try to replicate these styles, I really wanted to replicate them exactly the way they were. However, that wasn't possible. It was a really difficult process, and I almost decided not to go with the Mattel figures. I actually was second guessing myself and considering going with the Deluxe Aggression figures, the last line of figures that Jakks Pacific made. However, I decided against that. Mattel was just so much better, and I know that Jakks Pacific had so many more options. They had so many more wrestlers that they had made. Even if it wasn't in deluxe form, they had, the Ruthless Aggression form that I could take the heads from if I needed to, because they would still work with the Deluxe Aggression. I decided to go against that, stick with the Mattel WWE figures, and just kind of, tough it out. So my biggest problem with the Mattel figures, trying to locate the parts, trying to figure out what bodies would work the best. And if I had to do any part swapping, it would have to be either the head, which is the easiest part to swap on pretty much any action figure. The arms from the bicep down just pops right off, so that's pretty easy. And usually from the thigh down, again, just kind of pops off. So that gave me a lot more room to work with, and if I needed to change out from the elbow down to the knee down, But when it came to swapping upper body and lower body, that was a lot harder to do. I didn't want to do any torso cracking, and so that limited my choices as far as the wrestling figures go. And then another problem I had is when I sat down and started doing research and looking up images, was not only deciding what figures I wanted to use, but if I could actually get a hold of them. There were a couple of the customs I wanted to make that I wanted to use parts from the Legends series. Some of the wrestlers from the Legends series are difficult to get a hold of. So that was a whole different problem in itself, was finding figures that I could actually get a hold of easily, either in the store or ordering online through eBay or whatever, that didn't cost a lot of money. It worked out, and I was able to find all the parts I needed, and not necessarily the ones I wanted, but I think I did the best I could, and I'm really happy with the turnout.